One of the writers on IGN posted a top 10 list of the best wrestling games of all time. And I wanted to just run through this list here, comment on it real quick, and then have you guys chime in, because I know we got a lot of gamers who listen to this show, who play a lot of the WWE games and other wrestling games from over the years. I used to play a lot of them myself, more so then than now. But here's the list, starting from number 10, working all the way up to number 1. This person put Saturday Night Slam Masters at number 10. I've heard a lot about this game over the years. I've never actually played it before. But I know it was very popular, and so that's fine. It seems like it would deserve a spot on this list. That's number 10. Number 9, and I would have had this maybe up a little bit, but Fire Pro Wrestling World. Fire Pro Wrestling goes back many, many years. And a couple of years ago, they rebooted it, or they came out with another, sequel or edition called Fire Pro Wrestling World, and a lot of the New Japan characters were in the game. I think I even did a Sound Off Gamer on it, at least once. Fire Pro is great. Fire Pro is always a very fun game. Number 8, WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game. Used to play the shit out of this thing when I was younger, and yes, it did rip off Mortal Kombat, a lot of Mortal Kombat qualities in the game, including the different rounds. And Mortal Kombat was made by the same company. I think it was Midway, was the maker of this game and Mortal Kombat. So they were kind of from the same family. But this was a game that, it was very over the top. So you had, for example, Doink the Clown would hit people with like a giant flower and a giant hand, and Undertaker would throw tombstones and souls at people. You would hit people and objects would come out of them. Hearts would come out of, I think, Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels. It was a limited roster, too. They had, I want to say maybe 6 or 8 playable characters in this game. Mr. Perfect was going to be one of them. Apparently, he just never showed up for the filming, for the motion capture. They would keep rescheduling with him, and he would keep, bailing on them. So Mr. Perfect was going to be in the game. He ended up not being in there. But you had Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, Lex Luger, Bam Bam Bigelow, Doink, Razor Ramon, Yokozuna, Undertaker. I always had a lot of fun playing the game. It was one of those button mashers, and again, all the crazy stuff that the weapons that you could use and stuff. But it was not a very realistic game. But the motion capture, the guys looked pretty good. I actually thought visually, like graphics-wise, the game looked pretty good. Number 7. WWF WrestleMania 2000, which came out for the N64. Number 6, Ultimate Muscle, Legends vs. New Generation, for Nintendo GameCube. I am not familiar with this game. I never played the game, so I can't really comment on it, but that came in at number 6. Number 5 was WWF, or WWE, I should say, 2K14. I see 2K14 on this list at number 5. It is the only 2K game of the entire WWE 2K series that made this person's list. Have there really been no better WWE 2K games since 2K14 came out? Like in the last 5 or 6 years, has there not been another quality version that would be better than 2K14? I know 2K20 was an embarrassment, that I know. But was there really no improvement from 2K15 to 2K19? I find that very sad. Number 4, WWE All-Stars, where all of the wrestlers were basically on steroids, beating the hell out of each other. It was like a cartoon version of a WWE game. Number 3 was WWE Smackdown Here Comes the Pain for PlayStation 2, after which came the SmackDown vs. Raw series, but Here Comes the Pain is still looked upon as one of the best WWE games ever made. And I do remember playing Here Comes the Pain. I had a lot of fun playing that game, so I have no issue with that being on this list. But then we get to the final 2. Number 2 is a game called Def Jam, Fight for New York. Now this is a game, it's a fighting game. Features a lot of rap artists. They have Snoop Dogg as a character in the game, Method Man, Redman, Fat Joe, Lil' Kim, Joe Budden, Ice-T, Ghostface Killer, Exhibit, Ludacris, Busta Rhymes, Flavor Flav, Sean Paul, Danny Trejo is in the game. Carmen Electra is in the game. A very interesting mix of characters in this game. My question is this. Can this really be considered a wrestling game? Now, I admit that I just got done watching a Boneyard match last night at WrestleMania. So if that's considered a match, then I guess this game could be too. It could be considered a wrestling game. But it's a question worth asking. I mean, it's very high on this person's list. Number 2. Would you consider Def Jam Fight for New York to be the number 2 greatest wrestling game ever created? Is it even a wrestling game? I never played it, so I can't speak for how good or bad the gameplay is. I've read up on it. I've watched some of the gameplay on YouTube. But I don't think I would call this a wrestling game. Maybe I'm wrong. Number 1, I don't think is going to be much of a debate. The number 1 greatest wrestling game ever made. It would not be number 1 on my list, but it's a matter of personal preference, and I know it would be number 1 probably on a lot of people's list, is WWF No Mercy for the N64, the last WWE game ever released for the N64 game console. It was a great game. It was a great game. It was very easy to play, like the gameplay itself, the controls and everything. It was a lot of fun to play. I played it not too often. I usually would go over to a friend's house. He had the N64. I went up to SNES. I had Genesis. I had some of the portable ones like Game Boy and Game Gear, but never had an N64 of my own. I had a friend. He had everything. N64, and Neo Geo. I mean, he had everything. Sega Saturn. So I always used to have fun playing No Mercy. And I look around online, and it's a very critically acclaimed game. So I'm not taking issue with ranking No Mercy so high. My issue would be there were 2 very big omissions from this person's list. And I understand it's just one writer, but I happened to see it, so I wanted to comment on it. 2 very big glaring omissions on this person's list. Number 1, and this is probably my all-time favorite, WWF WrestleFest, the arcade game. I understand that it was not a console game, it was an arcade. Maybe he didn't count it for that reason. WrestleFest, the arcade game, I used to feed quarters into that machine like it was, I was running out of money, and it was the last quarters I had to my name. I would feed that machine. I would have so much fun playing that game. And when I realized that I could play the ROM online, I was in heaven. I did a Sound Off Gamer playing WrestleFest a number of years ago that you could find on my YouTube channel. WrestleFest was the shit. It really was. And when I found out WWE was rebooting it, they were coming out with a new edition, a new version of WrestleFest as a mobile game on your phone. A few years ago, I got very excited until I actually saw what it looked like. And it looked nothing like the original WrestleFest. I was hoping they were basically porting over the old WrestleFest, maybe with newer characters. That'd be pretty cool. The old WrestleFest sprites and the old look of the game, Royal Rumble mode, Saturday Night's Main Event mode, the blue bar cage, but you have like the current roster. That could have worked. The WrestleFest they came out with was nothing like the WrestleFest of old. To me, that's number 1. But the other omission, WCW NWO Revenge. I think Revenge more so than World Tour. Revenge was a great game. I used to go to the store and play it in the store all the time. How do you leave that out? How does that not even make the top 10 of the greatest wrestling games of all time? No WCW NWO Revenge. That's a pretty glaring omission to me. So now you guys can chime in and let me know what you think. What would your top 10 look like? What do you think about the whole Def Jam debate here? Is it a wrestling game? Is it not a wrestling game? And do you agree? WrestleFest and WCW NWO Revenge. 2 very big omissions from that list. WrestleFest will always be my favorite.